Hey there, welcome to Hobie on YouTube. I have 8 different Boker USA made scout knives there on the table. While I had all those, I thought I would do a video showing a progression of changes over the years, different tang stamps and things like that. It's not a complete lineup, but it's pretty good. And how I came to have 8 is I had several in my collection already when I bought part of a collection from John Reese, which had several more, so now I have 8. And some of them are redundant, so I'll be selling a few of them. But before I did that, I wanted to make this video. And let me start off by saying that I think a lot of people overlook or discount Boker USA knives. They feel that, the knives coming out of Germany, well, that's an older company and those knives are higher quality. And that's true to some extent. But it's also true that Boker USA knives have been around for a very long time and they're excellent quality too. As a matter of fact, I don't think most people know that Boker USA actually started before Heinrich Boker of Zolligen, because Heinrich's brother Hermann immigrated to the United States, New York City in 1837 and started importing knives. And he set up formally Hermann Boker and Company with some partners in 1851. And that was years before Heinrich Boker went over to Zolligen and started Heinrich Boker and Company in 1869. So it's true that Hermann Boker, they were just importing knives for a number of years. But that became more and more expensive as the tariffs started to rise on knives imported from Germany and Sheffield. So the way that Hermann dealt with that was that he bought his own cutlery company here in the U.S. He bought Valley Forge Cutlery Company in 1899, which had just been started a few years earlier in 1892 by another German immigrant, Edward Grafmuller. So the two of them ran this company. They sold both brands, Boker and Valley Forge, made out of the same factories together for years. From 1899, they carried the Valley Forge brand up until 1950. And then, of course, Boker USA knives were made here in the U.S. all the way up until 1983. On this side of the table, I have Boker knives with Boker tang stamps. And over here, I've got Boker knives with some other kind of tang stamp. And I'll go back and forth and just try to keep them in chronological order. But this knife right here, I think, is my earliest or one of 2 earliest examples that I have. And it really threw me for a loop when I did my unboxing video, because I got the knife out and I was like, oh yeah, great, a really early example of a USA, Boker made USA scout knife. And then I saw the tang stamp and I saw where it read H. Boker & Co.'s Improved Cutlery. And I was like, whoa, that's an early German tang stamp. Is this knife made in Germany? Sure looks like a USA-made knife. Is the blade made in Germany? Well, not having the Boker tang stamp chart at hand at that time, I didn't realize that this is the only tang stamp that Boker used on both knives made in Germany and in the U.S. And they put it on knives in Germany from 1869 all the way up until the 1930s, and they put it on knives made here in the U.S. Well, I guess imported too, from 1851 up into the late 30s, 1930s. And I'm getting those dates from the Boker book by Ricky Ray and Neil Punchard. So it's really great to have that on this knife. I think that's a special tang stamp to have on one of these, and it sure helps date the knife. Again, I think this is one of their earlier examples, and I'll just compare it to an image from their 1928 catalog, and you can see the similarities. And one big one to me is that it has smooth bolsters, no lines. I think they started putting line bolsters on their knives a little later on, but these earlier ones had smooth bolsters. You can see it has the same gimp shield here. Boker started using that in 1925 when they first came out with scout knives. They used that shield, by the way, all the way up until 1956. There in the catalog you can see that that knife just says Scout and this one says Scout Knife. I don't think that's a big difference. The jigging of the bone handles looks very similar. The delicate bail, the very broad, stubby screwdriver cap lifter, the one-piece old-style can opener, crescent nail nick on the blade. The only difference really is the awl, and I think the catalog, took some artistic license. First of all, you'll notice that the milled side is turned so you can see it from the mark side of the knife. They never made knives like that. But it does look more milled out than that one, or milled out a little differently, so this one could be a few years younger. Now this next knife is exactly the same knife. Even says Scout Knife on the badge and everything. It's the exact same knife. You had some difference in the color of the bone, but it has the Valley Forge tank stamp. And this reads Valley Forge, first line, Cutlery Co., second line, Newark, New Jersey, third line, and then way down on the fourth line, if you can see it, Made in USA. And while Valley Forge was making knives from 1899 from actually 1892 and up to 1950, according to Goines' Encyclopedia of Cutlery Markings, this particular tank stamp was used from 1916 on up through 1950. And also on the back here you can see that there's a V and an F in a circle. If you have a Valley Forge knife with that on it, your knife can't be before 1916. But in all other aspects, this knife is identical to the one I just showed you. One thing I neglected to show you on the H. Boker & Co. improved cutlery knife is that on the back there is the chestnut tree. On the back tang. Okay, up next is another Valley Forge branded knife. This one may be a little younger than the one I just showed you here because it does have lined bolsters. You'll notice it doesn't say anything on the shield. But what makes this knife so special to me is that it does have the blade etch. Still can read Valley Forge, VF, and a circle in the center. Isn't that great? And it has the same tank stamp, the curved Valley Forge, Cutlery Company, Newark, New Jersey, Made in USA, and the VF in the circle on the back. It's pretty much identical to this older knife here that I just showed you. Again, that one has lined bolsters and the etch. And this one's identical to that one. Again, we got the lined bolsters. This one does read Scout Knife on the shield, but it doesn't have a blade etch. Not one that's still visible anyway. It does have the same tank stamp. And it's really a great knife. And I'm going to show it to you carefully because I don't need two that are exactly the same, and I think I'll be keeping the one with the etch. It's very sharp. Full awl. Good bail. So yeah. That'll be on my All About Pocket Knife shop soon, if you want to take a look at that. Okay, trying to keep this in chronological order. All the knives I just showed you are from the 1920s or 1930s. This next knife I think is from the 1940s. And Boker did have another tank stamp after the H. Boker & Co.'s improved cutlery. When they discontinued that in the mid-30s, they started using a tank stamp that was just simply Boker. All block letters, just B-O-K-E-R, one word, one line. They used that from like the mid-30s up until about 1941. Then in 1941, all the way up until they quit making pocket knives here in the U.S., 1983, they used Boker USA, just like this. So most of the Boker USA knives you're going to find are going to have this tank stamp. Now, this is an interesting knife. I think it was actually from the Wartime because it does not have any brass. And it does have steel bolsters and a steel bail, and it's just a lower quality than all the other examples that I have. And this really looks mass-produced, kind of like a wartime contract. I do believe it's from the period in the 40s there, those couple of years where brass was not available for pocket knives. Matter of fact, pocket knives weren't really available for civilian use. They were all going to the military effort. So this was probably a military-issued knife. It's kind of like an Army engineer's knife. But it still has the old style can opener and bone handles. You can see no shield. But that just kind of shows you a knife from the 40s. Now this next knife, or the next two knives, are going to be from the 1950s, perhaps the 1960s. Still have bone handles. Now we have the line bolster, and we did on this knife as well. Same shield, nothing on it. We've got a bail that's more of a punched out flat affair from the earlier ones. Matter of fact, look at the frame on this knife, how much broader it is, less rounded. So they changed quite a bit, and they changed the tool configuration quite a bit too. Now you have more of a safety style can opener. It's a two-piece tool, and it's on the main blade end, and where the old style can opener was, there is now a long screwdriver cap lifter, much longer. Instead of the punch, the knives now carried a pen blade, and the main blades had long nail pulls. So there's your Boker USA tank stamp again. And on the back of this model, you can actually see the model number, 9361. Again, I believe that knife's from the 50s or the 60s. And this knife is identical to it. You can see that the color of the bone scales are quite different, but in all other regards they're the same. I'm going to sell one of these. I don't need two, so again, look for those on my All About Pocket Knife shop. And finally, here is another knife from the same era, basically the same knife, except that it has the John Primble Belknap Hardware and Manufacturing Company tank stamp. So John Primble Belknap was a big hardware chain, and they had private label scout knives that they had made by Boker. And you can tell your John Primble Belknap is a Boker because on the back, by their model number, which I think is what, 3335 there? I'll blow it up. I can't really see right now, but all of these will have a star under them if it's made by Boker. And this is just a wonderful knife. Just look at these handles and how well made it is. How clean the steel is. There's that long nail pull again. But yeah, it's identical to the knives that I just showed you. This is just a really, really nice, my nails are giving out, but that's a really nice pattern. It's a really nice model, and they're built really sound. I think having the pen blade's kind of useful. It's a little different. Okay, so that's a rundown of all my Boker USA Scout knives with a healthy mix of Boker history thrown in there and some tang stamp information and a lot of dates. But if you're looking for early Boker knives, you can look for H. Boker & Co.'s Improved Cutlery Tang Stamps, or just Boker, Boker USA after 1941, Valley Forge Cutlery Company, and even John Primble Belknap. Those are all Boker USA knives. They're all quality, they're fun to collect, and they're really kind of overlooked. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed that, and have fun collecting.